All right, so moving on from the sort of church-related liturgical dramas that were being presented up until about the 1500s. Every Man is 1503. Right about this time, the world of Europe is going under a fairly radical change, and England is not an exception from that. So this is really where there's a significant movement going on in Italy, not quite so much in France, Spain, and the Germany, Prussia area at this time, parts of Western Europe, but because of the scene that's happening, that's starting to develop in England, it's really kind of the primary course because it's what gives us Shakespeare and so forth. So church started to, its use is dwindling, and this is partly because of the Protestant Reformation. Protestant Reformation, of course, brings the doubt into people's minds about the genuine nature of the church and some of its practices. So because of that, what had been a fairly significant stronghold across most of Northern and Western Europe becomes now, there starts to be cracks. And those cracks lead to people questioning their existence a little bit more, kind of like the Greeks did back in the day. So we start to get non-monastic universities, places of study that don't have an emphasis on Christianity or the elements of the religion itself. Most of these universities, their studies are what is known of the Greek and Roman Empire. They're studying the classics, they're studying the procedures, and studying the architecture, as well as things like the notice of law. Okay? It first initially starts out as what we would call an elementary school, probably. These boys' schools that were literally teaching reading and writing to a much more expanded basis. This wasn't public education per se, but it was not just monks and priests that were receiving the education now. The first sort of official secular play that has evidence of being performed at one of these schools or universities was Henry Medwall's Fulgens and Lucrece. And this is, interestingly enough, if you dial back the clock in British history to Henry VII, not Henry VIII, but Henry VII, there was some controversy because he was appointing people who were not of the immediate sort of like court family to positions kind of like his cabinet members. Okay? He was appointing people who had some university training, who had received some education and deemed themselves worthy of these positions. So it caused some controversy because it violated primogeniture. Anybody know what that means? Antonio?
The succession of the first son.
Exactly. The kings and or inheritance of every family was automatically passed to the first son. Well, this play, Lucrece, kind of falls in love with somebody who's not of her station and causes all kinds of rifts and ripples. And again, it's a piece that kind of reflects the questioning of the rules that they had be. Why does this person get to be a ruler or have a place of prominence just because they were born into it? Doesn't necessarily mean they're worthwhile candidate. So this is a premise that is really starting to be questioned quite a bit in the middle of the previous millennium here. Also at the boys' school, was a author named Nicholas Udall, who wrote a few plays. Rafe Royster Doyster.
That is the best name I've ever heard.
Isn't it a great name? Was probably his most well-known piece. It was sort of about a braggart warrior who goes around kind of professing how great he is and gets his due comeuppance in the end. This is a comedy. This is performed at boys' schools, meaning there were no girls' schools at this time, meaning that all the parts were played by the students. Gammer Gurton's Needle, which is actually not by Nicholas Udall, is another play that is developed out of a story of a couple of peasants, more of a rural society, battling over a sewing needle that goes missing. Okay? Now, what's significant about these is that they are borrowed plots from Plautus and from Terence. So the study of the class